This is your Wednesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Football. Talk a lot about that today. Keith Richotte will join me for my least favorite team is my favorite team, the last one of those before the regular season starts. That will be a regular segment during the year talking about the Vikings. Also have Randy Johnson on the show today to talk Gopher football, looking back at that loss against Ohio State, looking at the impact of the Mohamed Ibrahim injury, and seeing what they can do going forward here this season. But first, what did I miss? I'm going to talk Twins for just a minute here before we get to the football, because I just think it's interesting and a little bit unfortunate the season, and at least the order of the season of Alex Colomé. Had another save in the Twins' 3-0 win over Cleveland on Tuesday. That gets his season ERA now, guys, under 4. I never thought I would see that after he started the year so poorly. Had an ERA of 8 after the first month. Really, as the more or less as the Twins closer, responsible, one of those primary responsible people for the season going so poorly. Lost his job, basically threw him into lower leverage situations for a while now. Since then, though, from the middle of June until now, 11 saves, 2.64 ERA, opponents only with a 6.15 OPS against him. Not getting a ton of strikeouts still, but inducing a lot of soft contact, kind of what you wanted out of Colomé from the jump. So not saying this absolves him, just saying, he was probably due for some of that progression, right? Not regression, progression, back up to, what he was before, the pitcher the Twins thought they were getting. Again, not that it matters a whole lot this season. By the time he figured it out, unfortunately, the season was pretty much over for the Twins in all practical competitive purposes, but at least for his sake, getting much better as the season went along, and I did not imagine he would ever get that ERA under 4 where it is right now. Back on Daily Delivery today, Randy Johnson covers Gopher football. He'll be on every week, usually on the Tuesday show, but everything's kind of pushed back a day because of the holiday. Randy, how you doing?
Oh, pretty good.
So it's 14-10 Gophers at halftime on Thursday. They're up on Ohio State, one of the best teams in the country. The bank is rocking. Everything's going well. And then the second half happens. They give up 35 points. Their star running back gets injured. We know now out for the season. What a difference a half makes, huh?
Yeah, really. It was a pretty electric atmosphere going there. And it's 14-10 at the half. Ohio State goes ahead. Gophers retake the lead at 21-17. And, you're thinking, okay, we're going to have a game going into the fourth quarter here. We did. The strip sack of Tanner Morgan, that really changed things, basically gave Ohio State a little separation there at 31-21. And then 37 seconds left in the third quarter, and Mohamed Ibrahim goes down, and their fortunes took a bad turn there.
So what we learned from PJ Fleck the other day, earlier this week, that Mo is out for the season. Maybe just for the listeners, describe what a loss that is, because this is a guy who, one of the best running backs in the country, and then depth-wise behind him, how do they try to replace that?
Yeah, you're basically talking about a guy who averaged 153 yards a game last year, second in the country. He was a third-team All-American, Big Ten running back of the year, and basically came back in even better shape, a little trimmer, probably more muscle. Looked really good, and he was handed to the Buckeyes pretty good there, 163 yards and 30 carries, and everything was looking great. They'll have to probably do it by committee. Looks like you'll see guys like Trey Potts, who's a little more of a receiving threat too. Cam Wiley, Bryce Williams. He's been around for quite a while. He actually 2018, he rushed for 133 yards against Miami, Ohio, this week's opponent. And then, they have a couple freshmen in there, a true freshman in Bucky Irving and a redshirt freshman in Kai Thomas. So they're we'll see how he does it. I think you'll see different guys getting carries. The good news is they're operating behind a very good offensive line, so that should help the running game go. You saw the Gophers go to the tight end a bit more. Brevin span forward this past week, so they're diversifying the offense a little bit. It looks like.
Yeah, that's good. It'll be there's so much to take in when you play an opponent like that. When you have an injury like that, it's hard to kind of make too many judgments off of one game, especially the way it went. But as we kind of think about kind of recalibrating after that game, after the good, the bad, the injury, how do you feel about this team going forward? Where do you think they and how do you think they feel about themselves?
Well, I think they take, they always take the next man up analogy. It's a lot tougher when the next man to be replaced, the man to be replaced is somebody as good as Mohamed Ibrahim. PJ basically was talking that, you just don't replace him. You hope you get near the production after from what you have, but they're a team that likes to run the ball, likes to run the clock, basically keep the ball in the opponent's hands. And that's going to be more difficult to do without a guy like Mo. He just really got the tough yards over the past 3 years.
Yeah, and then you think about the rest of the Big Ten, the Big Ten West in particular, it doesn't seem like there's necessarily a runaway team. You saw Wisconsin struggle on offense, losing to Penn State, although that's an awfully good Penn State defense too. Does this still feel like, I'd feel a lot better if Mo was still healthy. That said, does this still feel like a team based on what you saw, based on what you know about the offensive line, but also what you saw from the defense, that you think can still be in that conversation in the Big Ten West?
I think they can if things go well for them. They need to get that defense shored up there. I mean, you hope that's an aberration, seeing what happened against Ohio State and their playmakers. They really got sideways on them when they lost Jordan Howden in the secondary. Ohio State was able to exploit some matchups there, and especially on those big plays in the second half. Sounds like Howden's going to be back this week, so that's good news for them. The team, I was pretty impressed with Iowa this weekend with what they did against Indiana. So they're right now, I would say they're the team to beat in the West. You look at what Mo brought to the offense and how much they relied on him. It's going to be a loss in the Big Ten season. They're going to have to get it sorted out in the non-conference season and see if they can, by committee or however, just basically get that kind of production back. It's not going to be the same, but maybe they can pull it off.
A couple more things for you, Randy Johnson. I saw PJ Fleck talking about the targeting, calls, not call. It's like, early on in the season, we're already confused about what targeting is. Give me a kind of a summary of his concerns and his thoughts about, especially from week one.
Well, he didn't talk a whole lot about it. He just basically said that they sent their concerns to the Big Ten Conference, which the director of officiating, and it's a normal thing that teams do. And they'll point out a few, calls that they have questions on or concerns about, and they'll send in video clips. And he was waiting to hear back from the Big Ten on those. I mean, it's obviously the fan base was very fired up about it. I felt both were targeting. One was called targeting, then reversed. The second one, the hit on Mike Brown-Stevens, to me that appeared to be textbook targeting. But when they didn't even review it for targeting, they reviewed it for the fumble, which gave the ball to Ohio State. It sure seemed like head-to-head contact to me, with the crown of the head striking Mike Brown-Stevens in the head.
Yeah, me too. It's baffling. It's just, it seems like it's called different ways, different games, different weeks, kind of depends on the interpretation. Last thing, Randy, if you're PJ Fleck, or even just if you're Randy Johnson, what do you want to see from the Gophers in this upcoming game? What would make you feel better about their prospects for the upcoming season?
I think you're going to see I'm looking to see what they do with the running game. How they if they can identify one back as the main one, or are they going to be going by committee? I'd like to see if somebody emerges with the physical nature that Mo Ibrahim had. And that might be very tough. I mean, he was a violent runner. He got the really, really tough yards inside. Do they have that on the roster, and can they develop it that quick? Those are the big questions.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more from the defense as well, although I'm not sure how much we would learn in particular against Miami of Ohio, but we will find out soon enough. Randy, good stuff. Follow his work, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com, and we'll do this again next Tuesday.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
I'm Nyla Jean Myers, Senior Assistant Sports Editor at the Star Tribune. Thank you for listening to Strip Sports Daily Delivery. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast and our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
Welcome back for another week of My Least Favorite Team is My Favorite Team with Keith Richotte, longtime friend of mine. Keith, how you doing today?
I'm all right. We haven't started the Viking season yet, so I still have hope for life.
That's a good point. For those who missed last week's segment in the introduction, Keith, we go way back, like more than 3 decades, to the point where the Timberwolves weren't even a team anymore. And we do this. We're going to do this segment every week during the season, talking about the Vikings primarily. And there is another Vikings podcast though on this on StarTribune.com's network, Access Vikings. Are you familiar with Access Vikings?
Well, Michael Rand of the Star Tribune, a lot of people in the last week or so, at least dozens, perhaps even hundreds, have contacted me and asked me why it is that I'm doing this podcast. And you know very well it's certainly not the money, but I am doing it because this is my opportunity to finally take those smug jerks at Access Vikings down a peg.
I'm on that show too, right?
Well, it's not so much you, right? Because we've had our conversations. It's your co-hosts who we both despise with the white hot fury of 1,000 burning suns.
Well, yeah, we had the taco bet last week. I took the Gophers to have more wins than the Vikings this year. Feeling less good about that right now. You are absolutely going to win that bet. You are absolutely going to win that bet. And can I just say that the seething tension on that Access Vikings podcast between you and the co-hosts is why I keep listening to it. Well, good. I hope so. It's the tension that we build up, and it's the behind the scenes kind of angst that really makes that podcast work, I think.
And I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here, but before we recorded today, something that the listeners should know. I believe the exact quote from you is that Ben Gessling and Andrew Kramer, between the two of them, only know 16 letters of the alphabet.
And they use them pretty well to write, but when you're only limited to 16 letters, it's kind of tough.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're going down.
In case anybody doesn't realize, that was a little bit of parody. I love those guys, but Keith can have a rivalry with them if he wants. So I got three things. I got 3 things written down that I want to get to today. Number one, so I've seen, we've talked about even last week, just kind of the all over the map kind of nature of how this Viking season could go, right? I mean, even if you're pessimistic right now, you noted last week, like if some things break right, you can see this being a successful season. My question to you is, if it's not in that kind of level of success where you're thinking, okay, they could actually like compete in the playoffs, if it's not like a 10, 11, even 12 win team, are you the kind of fan, or are you of the mind where you want this to be really bad so that it could just be like a clean break and start over? Or is that not how you approach a season, I guess is how I would say.
That is a miserable way to spend life as a fan, right? Rooting for bad things to happen so that watching the draft is more exciting, right? So that sometime in April, you can sit there for 4 hours and watch dudes just talk about football players instead of actually watching football. So I've got little in the way of interest of tanking or losing for the hopes of getting whoever the next great quarterback's going to be. I mean, I watch the games in the hopes that they will win, with the knowledge that they will never win it all.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same mind. Like intellectually, I get that they probably would be better served with a 4-win season than an 8-win season in some ways, just because you do get a higher premium pick. But at the same time, like you get into this cycle and you see teams that start to lose and then they can't get out of it, right? Like once you have a season that bad, sometimes you don't get out of it for quite a while. Sometimes you never get out of it if you're like Detroit or somebody like that. Like you just you get into this spiral and you can't get out of it. So I'm of the same mind. I think you try to win no matter what. If you're a fan, you want them to win. And I could see this season going a lot of different ways, but I was curious just to see what you think about this year, because with such a range of possibilities, I guess it's you can root for a lot of different outcomes this year.
Well, that's absolutely true. And I'm growing more pessimistic, partly because I had a realization the other day, and I want to throw this to you as well and see what you think about this, right? I realized the other day that Mike Zimmer is the 21st century version of Buddy Ryan, right? That there is little actual difference. There's somebody who's so focused on defense and who's really good at it. But just like Buddy Ryan squandered the best years of Randall Cunningham's career, right, and couldn't get over the hump because he seemed to be utterly concerned with just one side of the ball and was a little too impulsive and maybe not a great game manager and what have you, that he could only go so far. He was terrific as a defensive coordinator with the one Super Bowl with the Bears that they won, but that was about it. And I as soon as I had that realization, I have not been able to shake the feeling that what we're dealing with here is just another version of Buddy Ryan.
Yeah, I think that could be you could be onto something there. I think the way that
I probably am. I'm very smart.
You're very smart. You have many degrees. Here's what I think. I think one, it's harder in the NFL sometimes to have a defensive minded head coach, because if you do have any offensive success, you're going to lose your offensive coordinator to a head coaching job, because those are the guys that tend to get snatched up. So you're going to have a lack of continuity there. And I think that lack of offensive continuity, more than Zimmer's fixation on defense, is the thing that's really kind of held them back over the years. I mean, how many years in a row have they had a different offensive coordinator now? I mean, they started 2016 they had Norv Turner. 2017 they had Shermer. 2018 they had DiFilippo, who got replaced in the middle of the year. 19 they had Stefanski. 20 they had Gary Kubiak, and last year, and now they have Clint Kubiak. I mean, just the continuity, even though the system is the same, I think it could have worked better with Zimmer in this model, as him focusing mostly on defense, if there had been kind of that, Josh McDaniels type that has stayed with Bill Belichick for so long in that tenure, because Belichick's very much of the same mold, right? He's very focused on defense. He obviously, the pedigree, I'm not comparing Mike Zimmer to Bill Belichick in terms of accomplishments, but when you have someone that you can trust on that side, and you can then kind of focus on what you want to focus on, I think it can work better. But I think the comparison is apt in that I think when you do overemphasize one side of the ball and it's defense, maybe there is a deficiency there.
Well, and I think that you're absolutely right. And I don't think that it's an either or situation. I think that these things contribute to each other. So I think you're absolutely correct that the major problem is the lack of continuity. But to what extent is that lack of continuity exacerbated by the fact that Mike Zimmer almost seems to have contempt for that side of the ball, right? And has certainly contempt for his quarterback, and is maybe not someone who is fostering an environment where there is an emphasis on that side of the ball, right? And so to what extent, I mean, there have been jokes about him throwing his offensive coordinator under the bus how many times after games and what have you. So if you show that level of almost contempt, right, for that side of the ball, or to just one factor of your whole team, to what extent does that affect the whole as well too? And which leads into that lack of continuity. I mean, Who was it that quit in the middle of the season?
For the Vikings?
No. The offensive court. You just mentioned him. I forget his Norv Turner.
Norv Turner.
Like, up and just left in the middle of it. Like, had enough, right? Was another grumpy old man who decided that he just had enough. And so then to what extent? And he famously didn't like, it wasn't Stefanski. I don't know. I'm forget. Point is,
he didn't like DiFilippo. That was the one that he fired mid-year, and it just was a bad arrangement from the start.
So, you're dealing with a guy who doesn't seem well equipped to manage the totality of the team. And to what extent does that affect however the possibility for success when it comes to the team as a whole?
I think that's a good point. And that brings me to my second thing I wanted to bring up, which is special teams. Another thing that doesn't seem to be managed particularly well over the course of time. They've had a lot of different long snappers, a lot of different place kickers, and now they changed punters again, which is also their holder midstream last week. They got rid of Britton Colquitt. I know this seems like a small point, but I do want to bring it up. Like this lack of continuity on special teams, which I've talked to Ryan Longwell about multiple times, which, people might dismiss as, he's the holder, he's the punter. What does it really matter? It kind of does matter. And it does kind of show maybe a lack of understanding on that part of that side of, that third side of the game that could win or lose you one or two games this season.
When I heard that the punter got cut, all I could envision was a single tear running down Ryan Longwell's cheek about this utter lack of continuity. And I think, he makes a certain point. I think that he overstates it for some obvious reasons, in my personal opinion. But you consider the success that Daniel Carlson has had since he left the Vikings, and you consider the seemingly impulsive nature with which they've made decisions about the kicking game. And again, what you have somebody who doesn't seem to demonstrate enough concern for a significant part of his football team, which ultimately limits what you are capable of doing. If you are not going to have concern for your offense or your special teams, or you're willing to just sort of swap in as if these are simply interchangeable parts, you're looking for trouble.
Yeah, you are. And the special teams was bad last year. The coverage units, hopefully, they look like they could be better this season. But I got a lot of questions about, the place kicker right now is not, Greg Joseph is not tried and true. They got, their long snapper, he's back at least after kind of some roster shenanigans last week. But they at least need to be adequate. And maybe they will. Maybe it's an overstated point, but I do want to put that out there as something that, among the concerns I have this year, that is one of those concerns.
It's real shocking, right? It's real shocking that the Vikings fans might have to get used to problems in the special teams unit.
Shaky kicking has never cost them in a meaningful game as far as I can remember. But then again, I have my memory wiped clean every season. So
that's right.
Smart of me. Isn't it smart of me?
That's what I should start doing.
All right, last thing for you before we go, and then next week we actually get to talk about games that actually happened. Opener Sunday against the Bengals. Keith, I was thinking about Kirk Cousins the other day.
Why would you do that to yourself?
Well, here's my question for you. Just right now, and obviously this era is not over. Where does Kirk Cousins fall right now in your Vikings quarterback hierarchy? In terms of their past quarterbacks, how do you slot him in? Because the numbers are pretty good. He's made the playoffs. He's had 3 seasons now. He's been durable. That said, hasn't had the level of success you might want to have. And I have one name that I feel like is kind of a match, and I want to see what you think.
Well, okay. So what is your name? Because you take the one glorious Brett Favre year. That was magical. Dante Culpepper, before he ripped up his knee, I would take him over what was happening. If you could put the 1 year where Case Keenum just flung the ball in the air and Stephon Diggs saved him.
Someone went and caught it all the time. Yeah.
Right. I'd take that. There was some, they're different eras, so it's hard to compare a Tommy Kramer or a Wade Wilson or any of those guys. because they were playing a different game in so many respects. But they were solid quarterbacks. They were in many respects Kirk Cousins without the money and without the lack of credibility with the team. That's sort of where the thinking starts. So what is this name?
I feel like his tenure has reminded me the most of Warren Moon's time here.
Yeah. Warren was successful. He was successful, but again, couldn't quite bring the team over the hump. But the one thing about Cousins, and maybe this is just because we have more access now and we have more ability to get a sense of what's going on within the team as well, too. The one critical difference, and I'm curious what you think about this, is I never got the sense that the team didn't necessarily believe in Warren or didn't see him as a leader in the way that I get the sense that the team doesn't see Kirk as a leader now.
I think that's true. And I think, I feel like the last, 6 to 12 months have done Cousins no favors. I feel like maybe that, you go back to 2018 when I thought he played pretty well, 2019 when, he took them to the playoffs and got that playoff win last year, and everything that's happened this year has certainly changed the perception of him, changed that reputation. I think you're right. I think Warren Moon definitely had, he was certainly towards the end of his career when he came here, but still a very capable passer. So I think leadership wise, yeah, he had more of a command. I guess all I was thinking, the primary thing I was thinking of was a guy who put up really good numbers, who could get you to the playoffs, but just had a certain number of limitations, especially at that point in his career. We're talking about Warren Moon, that when he got here, that was about as much as he could do here. And it kind of reminds me of what Cousins has done here so far.
Do you think that because we went to that one stupid playoff game?
Maybe.
Spent too much money.
Everything's clouded by the fact that was the Vikings-Bears playoff game after the 94 season was the first Vikings game I ever saw. And they lost to Eric Kramer and the Bears. It was like 35-18 or something like that.
And
we drove through the night. We drove through the night to get here.
Right. I had to work that evening. I had to work the previous evening and didn't get off work till something like 1:30 in the morning.
I think we went to Perkins.
Where we were accosted by a drunk individual who accused me of being arrogant because I was in college, although I was not in college that particular year, and then drove through the entirety of the night to make sure to get to this stupid game that, again, I could not have afforded. I probably should not have spent my money on. And then we watched that debacle.
We did. Maybe that's clouding my judgment. I don't know. But that's when I was thinking about asking you about the hierarchy, that was the name that came into my head. And like I said, though, the chapter is not over. He still has a chance to rewrite history for better or worse this year. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to the games. I want to watch football on Sunday. Finally get to see what this team can actually do. It was a bad preseason. The vibe is not good, but you know what? Once you start the season, you can change that pretty quickly.
So this first game seems actually kind of vitally important in some respects, right? This is a game that they should win. And if you don't win this one, you have a sense of where this season is going, right?
Yeah, I feel like you learn more. Like you kind of need to win this one. They're favored on the road. Cincinnati's not a great team. If you lose this game, suddenly you're like, okay, then they got to make up a game somewhere down the road that you should have, that you think was a loss or more of a toss up. And yeah, if you probably learn more about this team if they lose than if they win, but you still learn either way.
So is it too much to propose a segment within a segment where we predict if they lose, who Zimmer will throw under the bus?
We could do that. I mean, if they lose, there's a lot of different candidates. They can, like I said, this is a team that for all of its strengths can lose a lot of different ways too. So it won't be the defense that he throws under the bus. Probably it will probably either be the kicker, the punter, or Kirk Cousins.
I was going to say somehow the brand new punter is going to take a healthy swipe.
Well, we'll see how it unfolds. We'll do this again next week. Good to talk to you. We'll see you soon. Just a postscript to that Kirk Cousins Warren Moon comparison. I hadn't even looked this up when I was thinking about it the other day, but the comparison becomes even more apt when you look at some of the stats. Both of them 3 seasons with the Vikings, at least so far. Cousins will get a 4th. Warren Moon had a winning percentage of .539 in those 3 seasons. Kirk Cousins in his 3 seasons so far, .543. Warren Moon passed for 259 yards per game. Kirk Cousins, 258.9, almost identical. So they have performed pretty similarly. And again, I don't know how you think about Warren Moon in the context of Vikings history, but I feel like the mood has definitely shifted on Kirk Cousins. Let's finish with the cooler. Huge game for the Lynx tonight against Las Vegas. Teams very close in the WNBA standings. And just a reminder, too, the way the WNBA standings work and the playoffs work, 8 teams make it to the playoffs. The top 4 teams get at least 1 bye. The top 2 teams get a double bye into the semifinals. Now, the trick is, if you finish in that 3rd, 4th slot and get the first bye, that next round, when you come back, is single elimination. Now, right now, the Lynx are in the number 4 spot, have a chance to jump up. Las Vegas is number 2 right now, but only a game and a half ahead of the Lynx with Seattle in between them. But just a half a game behind the Lynx right now is Phoenix. So Lynx could finish anywhere from really 2nd to 5th right now. I would think Connecticut kind of clear of everybody at 22-6, a couple games even ahead of Vegas. So big game in the seeding. Lynx could fall down to 5th and have to play, in that opening round, have to play 2 single elimination rounds just to get into the semifinals, or they could get that single bye, or they could still get a double bye all the way to the conference, or all the way to the league semifinals. So a lot at stake tonight when the Lynx play against the Aces. That will do it for me today. I think I'll be joined by State Representative Pat Garofalo on Thursday for a discussion of sports wagering and the state of legalization in Minnesota. So you won't want to miss that chat. Good one there. Thanks so much for joining me here on Daily Delivery. Be back at it on Thursday.